Alrighty, what is going on? Rudy Pretender here, back with another Honkai Star Guide, and with the release of Hanu's Prison Break, the event that came out last night, comes the decision you have to make choosing one of these four-star characters, being Guanifin, Sampo, Asta, and Yukong. And so today I am providing a guide on who you should be picking. So I'm going to briefly go over what they do in a general format. I'm going to mainly be covering their dupes because a lot of people do have these. As you guys know, Asta is free, Yukong is free. A lot of people have Sampo, and now with the new update, a lot of people do have Guanifin as well. So I'm going to mainly be talking about their dupes, what their best dupes are, and what you should be getting, but I will also be briefly going over their kits. So before I get into the video, if you guys can drop a sub and turn on the bell icon for future videos like this, along with guides, summon videos, all that kind of stuff, it would be greatly appreciated. We are getting closer to the 1K goal, so any support is greatly appreciated, and let's get straight into the video. So starting with Guanifin, Guanifin is a fire dot based character, and what she does is obviously she burns because she is fire, and that's what her role is on the Nehori team. She also has a unique thing called Fire Kiss, and what Fire Kiss does is actually help enemies take more damage. So if they are inflicted with Fire Kiss, they will take increased damage. Sampo is a very big staple on the dot team, still sort of is, even though Black Swan is now the Win Nehori character that must be on there. I shouldn't say must, but is a very good option, but Sampo still is very good on it depending on the content. Sampo is a wind shear based dot, is very powerful on the dot team. With this ult, he actually increases dot taken by the enemy, so it can be very helpful for when you're running in with Kafka and when you trigger shock and all other kind of dots. And if the enemies are inflicted with wind shear, he actually takes less damage, so he can be a little more on the tankier side due to the fact that if they're inflicted with wind shear, he takes less damage. Asta is still a very good support, and what she does is she increases allies' attack based on how many times she hits a different enemy. And with her speed buff from the ultimate, it gives you a whopping 50 speed, which is super good. And Yukong is a overall buffer as well, but she has a trace that helps imaginary, because there's a trace that she has that increases imaginary damage dealt. So again, she is a nice overall buffer, she gives a good attack bonus, but it can run out quickly because it's kind of based on stacks. Her ult, if you have stacks active, increases allies' crit rate and crit damage, which is very good. And as I mentioned, she has a trace that increases only imaginary characters' damage dealt. But just because she has the damage dealt doesn't mean she's only tailored towards imaginary characters. She can be used elsewhere. So to influence her right away, if you're missing one or the other character, I definitely recommend picking one that you don't have. Otherwise, it would be best to focus on one you need, as I just gave you a generic rundown on what they do. If one fits your needs more than the other, that's the one I would recommend you start off with. So moving on to Eidolons, a really good Eidolon for Guanifin would be if you have her Eidolon 1, now with this you get her to 2. What it does is when an enemy target is burned, which her skill inflicts AoE burn, the damage multiplier of the burn status applied by her basic attack or skill increases by 40%. So it says if you do inflict a burn, or when they are being burned, you get an increase in multiplier, so she does more damage based off that. This is a very good Eidolon to get. Another really good one is if you have E5 going on to E6, which increases the stackable Fire Kiss count by 1, so you get another Fire Kiss, which, as I mentioned previously, Fire Kiss helps enemies take more damage. You'd increase the damage because you have another stackable Fire Kiss count on them, so you'd have another one, also meaning they would take even more damage. And so our first Eidolon is also very good if you don't have it. What it does is when skill is used, there is a 100% base chance to reduce the attack target enemy's effect res by 10% for 2 turns. And so this isn't just like respective fire effect res, this is just their overall effect res. So this can help your other dot characters, such as running Kafka or Black Swan, do even more damage with their dot. And 4 is also a pretty helpful one. What it does is when you every time the burn status inflicted by Guanifin causes damage, which it's dot, so every time on their turn, and if you have it applied to them, is when it would proc. Guanifin regenerates 2 energy, so this is a nice little bonus to have because you are recovering more energy, and so you can go on and throw out the ult. So definitely, if you are at E1 or E5, I would definitely recommend picking up one of these two because these are really nice damage increases. This one's less of a damage increase for her, but it helps your team do more damage, so obviously this will be good overall. And this one helps her damage by a good amount. If you don't have any dupes, the first Eidolon is also a very powerful option because again, it reduces effect res, which can help other dot characters do even more. And the fourth one is a nice little bonus if you say you have everyone else on this list E6. This is also a very nice option because it helps you keep up. It helps uptime on your ult more. Obviously, it isn't as powerful as the other ones, but it can be really good. Moving on to Sampo, a really strong one is actually his final dupe, and what it does is talents wind shear damage multiplier increases by 15%. So the wind shear inflicted by his talent, the multiplier increases by 15%, so his wind shear would be doing even more damage. So this is just a very nice damage buff to his wind shear. And the second one is also really good because when you defeat an enemy with wind shear, you have a 100% base chance to inflict all enemies with 1 stack of wind shear, equivalent to the talent's wind shear. So if you kill someone with wind shear, you will give everyone else on that field a stack of wind shear, which obviously more wind shear, more dot damage, the better. His fourth Eidolon is also good because what it does is when the skill hits an enemy with 5 or more stacks of wind shear, the enemy immediately takes 8% of current wind shear damage. So obviously that adds up, so this is a nice bonus to have on damage. And then a pretty okay one is his first one, is when using skill deals damage for 1 extra time to a random enemy. And so his skill hits a bunch of times, so this is also pretty helpful. And so similar to Gunaifen, if you have him E1 or E5, getting to E2 or E6, E6 will obviously be the best one in my opinion. But E2 is a close second. Both of these are super good to get, and I definitely would recommend getting these if you don't have it. And also if you do need Sampo dupes. Moving on to Asta, a really good Eidolon for her is the 6th one because charging stacks lost in each turn is reduced by 1. And so the stacks are the attack buff that your allies get, and you get that by attacking more enemies. And so reducing a stack each turn will help more uptime on that because you can stack it up to 5 times. So having it up even higher and losing less obviously makes it more manageable. So the 6th one overall is going to be the best one. The second Eidolon is also very good because when you use an ultimate, Asta's charging stacks will not be reduced in the next turn. So when you pump an ultimate for the next turn, you don't reduce the stacks. So just like as I mentioned for 6, this helps a lot with the uptime on those charges. Your first Eidolon is also pretty helpful because when you use your skill, it deals damage for 1 extra time to a random enemy. And as I mentioned previously, hitting different enemies would charge up the stacks up to 5. So obviously getting an extra hit on the skill will potentially lead to getting 1 stack. So it makes it even easier to get to those 5 stacks. And the fourth one is just kind of nice as well. Asta's energy regeneration rate increases by 50% when she has 2 or more charging stacks. Obviously, an energy regeneration rate is very nice and all, but obviously this is not something that like an energy regeneration rope can't just do on its own. It's definitely not as good as the other 3 I just talked about. So if you need any of these and you want to use Asta on your teams, all 3 of these are really good options to get. Moving on to Yukong, sadly, the 6th Eidolon for her is very much important because what it does is when using her ultimate, she immediately gains 1 stack of roaring bowstrings. And as I mentioned, it kind of gets annoying to have her buff up with the stacks because of the way it functions. So with this ult, giving her an extra stack of roaring bowstrings is pretty helpful, and is one that a lot of people consider to be needed. Her first dupe is also nice because at the start of the battle, increases the speed of all allies by 10% for 2 turns. For the first 2 turns going into battle, you get a 10% increase to speed, and obviously who doesn't like having more speed? More speed, more turns, the more damage you can dish out. And so second Eidolon, when any ally's current energy is equal to its energy limit, Yukong regenerates an additional 5 energy, so this pretty much just helps you keep uptime in your ult too, which is alright. The trigger count is reset after Yukong uses her ultimate. And then our fourth dupe, when roaring bowstrings is active, Yukong deals 30% more damage to enemies, which this one is not that crazy because she herself isn't the DPS. And so that is the dupe for all 4 of these characters. Again, the best ones from Gunaifen I'd recommend if you don't have and you want to use it would be number 2 and number 6. For Sampo, it is also number 6 and number 2. For Asta as well, it is number 6 and number 2. And for Yukong, it is definitely number 6 and number 1. So again, definitely keep in mind, this also depends on what you want on your side. If you want a fire dock character, you're going to mostly be tailored towards Gunaifen. You'd want to look and see what dupes you get. So if you get like, say you have a E5 Sampo, but a E2 Gunaifen. If you pick Gunaifen, you'd get her E3, but if you pick Sampo, you get E6. And the E6 will overall be better than the E3 because the E3 is just a skill up and basic up. So you definitely want to take a look and see which ones you have, and definitely keep in mind the ones I was saying of which one for each character is going to be a better Eidolon. And also keep in mind of the fact of who you want to use on your teams and who you might need. So if you need a speed / support buffer, Asta would be a good option. If you want a more imaginary tailored but can also be a good overall buffer, and say you have her around E5, Yukong isn't a bad option. If you need another dock character, preferably for wind, Sampo would be your guy. And if you need a dock character for fire, Gunaifen would be your girl. So that has been the video. I hope you guys found this helpful. Let me know who you guys end up picking, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.